भारत।
ये है भारत एफएम।
बजेगा भारत, झूमेगा भारत।
Hi everybody, welcome to another edition of Storytellers Cafe. Storytellers Cafe is a 30 to 45 minute segment on Bharat FM, and I'm your host Usha Venkatraman. Welcome to this special edition of Storytellers Cafe. We usually have one guest, but tonight we have two guests for you. So it's a double whammy, and do watch us, and you will be listening to some wonderful, wonderful stories. You know, stories have archetypes. In our culture, stories have occupied a central place. When you listen to a story, I invite you to suspend disbelief. There is an art to listening to stories. Stop thinking. You will miss the essence of stories when you bring logic. So don't logic your way through stories. Identify with the characters in the story. Go through what they are going through. Chant with them, sing with them, be happy with them, suffer with them. And without your knowing, if it is a good story, and I assure you it is, your mind will be uplifted, not in a linear fashion. I invite you to a meditation of a different sort tonight for the next almost 1 hour. Sit, lean back, and listen to the stories with your heart. Tonight, I present to you two wonderful guests. Both are founders of Mumbai Storytellers Society. Mumbai Storytellers Society is a registered non-for-profit organization set up 2 years ago only to keep alive the ancient tradition of storytelling in the teeming metropolis of Mumbai. So 6 storytellers came together who had a vision and a mission to execute this idea, that is, to promote the oral tradition. So today you're going to listen to two founders of Mumbai Storytellers Society, Hema Subramanian and Shreedevi Sunil, as they weave narratives using their voice, tone, expression, rhythm, and gestures to make for a captive listening experience. Let me first introduce Shreedevi Sunil. Shreedevi is a wonderful storyteller who started her career almost 10 years back, if I'm not mistaken. Shri can tell you. Hi, Shri. Welcome to Storytellers Cafe. Shreedevi is a storyteller, a puppeteer, very passionate about it, and has her own thriving personal business, and she will talk to us more about it. So, welcome, Shri. It's a pleasure to have you with us on Storytellers Cafe.
Thank you.
Yes, sorry, go ahead, Shri.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for coming in. And actually, this is our second year, right? It's 2 years since we set up, almost 2 years. And also, we are celebrating the first year of having completed our International Storytelling Festival last January. And luckily, we decided to have it as a biennial festival, right? Once, 2 years. Nobody foresaw this pandemic.
Yes.
Yeah. But I guess we storytellers are pretty intuitive. Somehow a little voice whispered that don't rush into it every year.
It's a lot of work. And given that MSS believes in creating something unique, I think 2 years is ample time for us to also plan something special to bring to our audience here in India.
Absolutely. Well said. Our next guest, storyteller, is Hema Subramanian. Hema Subramanian is also the founder of Mumbai Storytellers Society. Hema calls herself an expressionist. She is a creative thinker, a writer, and she also runs a successful business of her own. And she came on board, and we all together set up Mumbai Storytellers Society. You will listen to Hema, who's also a poet. Let me get Hema on the screen, and Hema will talk more about herself. Hi, Hema. Welcome to
Hi, Usha.
Storytellers Cafe.
Thank you so much, Usha. Thank you for having me over. It's a pleasure to be here.
Wonderful. Do you want to say something, Hema?
About myself, well, well,
This is a
yes,
platform to talk about yourself.
yes,
So go
like
ahead.
you rightly said, I'm an expressionist. I love to express myself in different ways. I love to sing, I love to dance, I love to write poems, write stories, and of course, tell stories. So that is a passion that I work around with. So it's more of the love of telling stories is what brought me here. And Mumbai Storyteller Society has been the a beautiful space where I developed myself as a storyteller, and I learned so much about the storytelling world, and I connected, and it is so much you know. Such a beautiful journey where I learned a lot, and I learned how to give, and how to spread this word of the oral tradition of telling stories. It is which is so beautiful. So I think being a part of Mumbai Storyteller Society is absolutely an honor for me, and it just gives me such pleasure to work for this cause. So yes, that's about how I view Mumbai Storyteller Society.
Thank
And
you,
about
Hema.
my
Thank you. Thank you. No, we'll have more conversations and expressions from both of you. I just want to tell the viewers that I know Shreedevi Sunil since 2010. I think 2010, end of 2010, 2011, we came together. In fact, we were almost going to start Mumbai Storytellers. We almost formed this with Dr. Kumi Vavaina of Mumbai University. She was heading the English department. And Kumi had a wonderful festival. That's when I met Laura Sims and some wonderful storytellers. And somehow that didn't get on board. But I know Shri Devi, and after that, of course, we went separate ways. Right, Shri? Do you have memories? Remember that time?
Yes, absolutely. So I think, first of all, for me, 2010, I was just a budding young infant storyteller. So it was a very exciting platform to connect with, storytellers in the city. And Usha had already been, in this art of telling stories for a while. So it was quite interesting to listen and, engage. We did for a while, but I guess sometimes things don't work out for a reason. And when we came together about a year and a half, 2 years ago, I think we definitely are a better team now because of the kind of experience we have. I stuck to storytelling for 10 years, and that has kind of helped in hopefully, pitching in the right sense for Mumbai Storytellers Society. I think that was key to have to be able to bring something to the table that is worthwhile, and to create a society that kind of takes storytelling to the community, which is what we all discussed when we all sat together, is that storytelling had become more for children and not for adults. And we realized that that is something that we should, create awareness around. And that has been a big part of our work pre-pandemic. And, we've taken to the virtual medium post-pandemic as well. So, yes.
Yes, absolutely. And I remember the first story I heard from you, Shri, was the Just So stories about how the elephant got its long trunk. I remember listening to that at Mumbai University at the Kalina campus. I
Wow,
very
you have
much.
an elephant's memory for sure.
I have a wonderful memory, and I think as storytellers, since we use the mnemonic devices, I think our memory is pretty strong. So I'm sure for one thing, we won't suffer from any kind of amnesia or from, the related
Dementia.
problems. Yes,
I
could
sure
be
hope not.
selective amnesia we could have.
Yes. Yes, I think from Usha, we heard a wonderful Native American story about why the leaves fall onto the floor.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, that was, I remember that story
Yeah.
very well when you
Yeah,
shared it.
yes. It is a Native American legend or a story which was retold by Tanya Butt. Tanya has been very inspirational for me. I met her way back in 2005 at the AVIC conference in Delhi, and she was, one of the featured tellers. And this is not what she told, but then she gifted me a CD. She came to Mumbai as well, and that's how I love the way she tells stories. So that was a retelling of her story. Yes. So moving back to Mumbai Storytellers Society, I just want to ask Hema, uh, what uh, what kind of interested you to join MSS? I know I invited everyone and we all came together because we needed 7 members to form a society. And out of everybody, I only knew Shreedevi. I had known her, in 2011. But the others, Hema, I knew because I did a workshop for her. But otherwise, everyone like Lopamudra Mohanty, Sharon Matthews, Devaki Bujang Gazri has unfortunately not joined us today, and 2 of our founders have, I wouldn't say left MSs. They are our well wishers, but they have, followed their career path. So we wish them well, but I thank each and every one of them for having come together to make Mumbai Storytellers Society happen. Something, when I visited last year, no, 2019, Toronto, and I met the founder of the Toronto Storytelling Association. I forget, Dan Yashinsky. Yes. Dan told me, when I told him that we have formed Mumbai Storytellers Society, he said, "Welcome to chaos. Do you know what you are in for?" So there might be a lot of turbulence, but I think we have the tenacity and we know what our mission is, right? So that's it.
I
So can
also feel that having a group of people working together is never easy, and I can say that 6 of us are very strong personalities with very, very creative ideas and good work behind us. And that's never easy to always, pertain in terms of length of time. But having said that, I think while all of us were in it together, we did kind of contribute in fantastic ways too. And I'm glad that in the first year we had all 6 of us contributing strongly, and that has given us a platform that we can take forward and build. So yes,
Yes, I
we
second
miss
that. Yeah.
them.
And I think we did a lot of wonderful work together, and it was really a wonderful space where we built up the base of MSS. Actually, the whole foundation was laid at that time, and it was really wonderful. And now we can take it forward from there. Yeah. So, Usha, coming to your question as to what brought me to MSS and what was my interest in it, is that, see, I have been teaching creative writing to children for many years now. I started my career only in my 39th year when I went back to college and I did my B.Ed, and then I joined as a teacher. But the moment I went into the school, I realized that I had found my calling, and I just loved interacting with children, and that was such a space that it was like an opening of a Pandora's box, and new ideas poured in, and I was doing pretty well over there. But well, family and life takes on, and I had to leave that part of my life, and so I had to get into something alternate, which would really take me forward and would also give me a space to express myself creatively and interact with children. So that's when my idea with the creative writing formed, and I started doing that. So as you know, creative writing is a major part of creative writing is storytelling and story writing. So how do you build up stories? How do you help children to build up stories unless and until you tell stories? So it was always a part of my work that almost every class, for every level, every segment, there used to be some story that used to come up with. I used to make up stories over there, or I used to bring stories from somewhere, and it was always based around stories, unless and until we were doing something else other than writing stories. So that is how I got into storytelling as such. But then I realized down the years, after especially a workshop, I realized that there is a special storytelling workshop, storytelling certification happening. So, and I went and joined Kathalaya under Mrs. Geeta Ramanujam, and attended her wonderful certificate program. And I enrolled for the diploma program. Okay, I still haven't finished the diploma. That is another story. But as a process of doing that, I met you all because I needed some interviews. I needed to do a lot of work. That's when I met you, Usha, and I came to you. And when we were talking about this, that's when I realized there's so much more to storytelling, and I can contribute to the world of storytelling by being a member of the society. And that's how I came into MSS. And though my work is basically doing facilitating English language, and I'm more into facilitation of English language learning and teaching of English language, but this has been a very, very strong part which has helped me with the other things also. So yes, those are the two dual paths that I walk.
Okay, wonderful, Hema. I know, Shri, I know you're not from Geeta Ramanujam's stable. I know most of us, like Sharon, as well as Lopamudra, myself, Hema, you and Devki were not from, definitely not from Geeta's stable, and I guess not from any stable as well. I mean, you all were true bred, I guess, horses, or true bred storytellers.
Well
So,
put.
what was that made you become a storyteller? You know.
So I like to talk to begin with. So of course, when you're young, storytelling was not really an option that I looked at. Through school and college, it was always theater, and at some point I wanted to be an RJ, but coming from a Tambram family, my mother shot that down as not an option. And, so I think when I became a mom, I was of course a teacher and an educator, and I used a lot of storytelling and drama, which came kind of naturally to me. And when I became a mom, I obviously dwelled in a lot of reading for my boys, my older one actually, and I myself read a lot. Then I met a friend of mine who we met at Mother Toddler, which also just sprouted in 2010, a very popular concept. And Deepa Panchal, she approached me, and she had grown up listening to stories from her grandparents, as opposed to mine, which was purely from books. And she kind of came to me and said, have you heard of this concept of professional storytelling? And I said, no, but, that's something that interests me because I already read a lot. And then we spent the next year doing research for, what we want Talking Turtles to be. And in the process, we did look up many different, workshops that were available at that point in time, given that we both had 2-year-olds. Going for opting for Kathalaya was not a possibility. So we did come across Dr. Eric Miller, who runs the World Storytelling Institute in Chennai. And when we spoke to him, I think fairly ahead of his times, which is fantastic, right? He was already willing to offer us a course through Skype, which is what we did. And of the many exercises we did, I think it was a 1-week course, very, very basic. But the one tip that stands till date is the fact that you should always pay attention to the children or the audience members who are tuned in, and not really focus on those who are not, because they will eventually want to come into that little bubble of story, of the magic of stories. So I think that has always stuck in my head. If I have to give credit to Dr. Eric Miller for one thing that has always stuck in my head, it still comes in handy. That also makes me less nervous, because I'm worried, why aren't they listening to me?
Sorry, I take back. So you're trained with Dr. Eric Miller. Yes, Eric is a good friend. We all love Eric and the World Storytelling Institute that he runs, and he's made a mark in India, and everybody, at least in the United States, may not know a Usha Venkatraman or a Shreedevi Sunil, but definitely they know Dr. Eric Miller. So coming back to, I think let's plunge into a story. So Shreedevi, I would go to you as a senior storyteller here. So, of course, I'm the senior most storyteller, but then, so for tonight, Shri, what do you have for us? And we would love to listen. Like I said, everybody is, I think, waiting with bated breath to listen to the word, the expressions, the tone, the accent, and I guess all the tools that we have.
Too much pressure, but yes. Okay, so I'm going to be sharing a Jewish folktale called Feathers. A little background on this is that this story I heard from my son. He was the one who told the story. He goes for a speech and drama class where he shared the story. And as a storyteller, I really resonated with it. I realized much later that it is a Jewish folktale. I think I realized in the last year when I was working on it. And it is called as Feathers, but here is my adaptation, and I hope you guys enjoy it. So the story goes something like this. There once was a storyteller who lived in a village. And because this story is from a long time ago, a folktale, back then, unlike today, where we storytellers get to sit in the comfort of our homes or sit in a studio with lights and, with a mic, the storytellers back then would typically gather the crowd under a tree, and the storyteller would sit under a tree, perhaps with an instrument, perhaps with a song, but definitely with a story. So our protagonist, the storyteller, sat down under the tree every evening. And the village people, elders, mothers, fathers, youngsters, teenagers, grandparents, grandmothers, everybody, little children, they would all gather under the tree to listen to the storyteller. And of course, he would have stories that began with once upon a time, a long time ago, one day. And he would enthrall them with his stories that he had written about people that he had observed from the village in itself. It could be about a mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law. It could be about a husband and a wife. It could be about a mother and a child. It could be about the guru and his shishya. So there were stories, many stories, and the people enjoyed these stories. Now, one day, the storyteller felt that it was time for him to travel. And so he decided that he would, visit other towns and villages and observe and bring back more stories to his village. And so one early morning before the sun rose, he set out on his journey. And he walked and traveled a long, long way to many, many different towns and villages. And in every village and town he went, he shared his stories. And people enjoyed them. People loved them. Of course, there was no TV or Netflix or Amazon back then. The storyteller was prime time, right? So everybody enjoyed it. Now, time passed. It was almost a year since the storyteller had traveled. And he returned back to his village. And it was the time of the day, it was that time of the night, the evening, when the storyteller would be under the tree and the crowd would gather. So he was very excited. He walked a little faster, was hoping that when he would go to that tree and the people would know he's back and they would gather back to listen to his stories. But when he entered the village, he noticed that the lights were off in houses. And there was a humdrum sound coming from under that tree where he would stand to tell stories. So his feet automatically went towards that sound, towards that tree. That was his dais and his stage to stand and tell stories. But when he reached there, a little far away, he stopped, almost like his feet became heavier and he could not move forward. For in front of him, under that same tree, that large, enormous tree with its branches flaying out, stood another young storyteller. That storyteller was standing in his spot and sharing the same stories. The same once upon a time, one day a long time ago, yesterday. The elderly storyteller was taken aback, but he was also enthralled by the story. He was hearing his story in the words and the voice and the sound of another person, and it was engaging. So he stood there almost like a statue, listening to that story after story. After every story, the crowd arose with applause and cheers for the young storyteller. The old storyteller did not want to express his joy about the story. And he hesitated. He felt a little bit of anger. But he did enjoy the story, you see, so he did not want to show what his true feeling was. He just stood there right at the back, at the end of the crowd, listening to the young storyteller. As the night passed and the stories were over, the people walked off talking about the young storyteller and how much they enjoyed listening to him. The older storyteller turned around to leave, to go back to his house, when suddenly the young storyteller came running and dashing and gave him a warm hug. And he said, "Thank you. You listened to me. How did you like my stories? Was I good? Did you enjoy them?" You see, he said, "I have heard you tell stories and I love them. And when you went off traveling, the community did not know what to do in the evenings, and we really missed the stories. So one day, with a lot of anxiety, I just stood there in front of them and said, can I share one of the stories that our storyteller shared with us? And the people said yes to me. And so I stood there and shared your stories. And oh, the community has come together and we have loved it. Thanks to you. And we hope you've come back with more stories for us," said the young storyteller. The elderly storyteller took a deep breath, sighed, said, "Well, I'm too tired. I don't think I want to talk to you right now. I just want to rest." And he walked off. The young storyteller's heart sort of sank because he was hoping that the person he admired might have had a word or two of encouragement for him. But he said maybe he is tired and went to bed. Our elderly storyteller went home. He unlocked that latch that had been locked for 1 year. He went inside. There were spider webs and dusts. He cleaned. He spent his energy and channelized himself to clean his house. And then a very tired elderly storyteller lay down in bed. The moonlight streamed in through his window. He turned, he tossed, he turned, he tossed. He just couldn't get himself to sleep. He turned and tossed and turned and tossed. And every story that the young storyteller told was in his head, his sound, his voice, his action, his music, and the cheers of the crowd just wouldn't let the elder storyteller sleep. He said, "That belongs to me. I am the storyteller. How can this boy tell my stories?" Well, in these thoughts, he spent the entire night. The moon set away and the sun rose. And the storyteller got up restless, for he said, "I have to do something." And he went for a walk. he went for a walk and he decided to go to the wisest person in that village. They say they have the answers to everything. And so he went to the wise old lady. And he asked her, he went to her and he said, I have something to talk to you about. And the wise old lady, she was eating pan. Let's set the story down in India. And she put it in her mouth. You seem troubled. What is it that is troubling? Sit down, my son. Tell me, talk to me, she said. And the elderly storyteller, he said, well, you see, I am a storyteller. You know that. You've heard my stories. And the old lady said, yes, I've heard your stories. Very good. But do you know who's telling stories to the village folks now? That boy, he's very good. I really enjoy his stories. But don't you know those are my stories? Your stories? Yes. Stories from a long time ago, stories from now and then. Your stories. Yes, they're all my stories. How can he tell them? It is my duty as a storyteller to be telling those stories. I'm upset that he's telling it. And so the old lady said, storyteller, why don't you do one thing? Why don't you get yourself a pillow? Meet me under that tree tonight. I will listen to the stories you have to tell. And so the elderly storyteller, well, he said, she knows what she's saying. She's supposed to be wise. Well, I don't have a choice. I'll just listen to her. And so he went home, spent the day sulking and upset with himself. And then in the night, he picked up a feather pillow and he went to that tree. He stood there waiting for the old lady, and the old lady came walking slowly with her, bag of betel nut leaves. And she came there and she sat down on a rock and she started eating her pan. And then she said, storyteller, now why don't you hold that pillow of yours? Stand up straight under the tree. Hold that pillow of yours and rip it apart. Let us see what happens to those feathers. And so the storyteller, he stood there. He took the pillow and he said, okay, rip it apart, I can. And he ripped it apart. The feathers that were in the pillow, they started to float. They started to fly, carried by the wind. Some landed on the treetops on leaves. Some landed on the sand, on the mud. Some under rocks, some behind rocks. And then he looked at the old lady and said, what do you want me to do now? She said, very simply, pick up and collect all the feathers. And he said, oh, all right then. And so he started frantically collecting the feathers. He collected and collected and collected as many as he could, but there were so many that had just been carried away by the wind, and he couldn't collect them all. He only had a handful. He got them to the old lady and he said, well, that's all I could get. And the old lady asked him to open his hand, and there were just only but a few there. And she said, you see, storyteller, stories are like the feathers. Once they are told, they should fly and they should be carried in the wind. And it's their own journey. They will reach a destination. From there, they will fly again. Your stories are like that. Let them fly. And so the storyteller went home with that thought. After a bit of thinking, he slept peacefully that night. The next day morning, before sunrise, he woke up again. He went and met the young storyteller. He embraced him in a warm hug and told him all the things he liked about his storytelling and a few things that perhaps he could change and tweak, and told him a few new stories from his travels. And then that night, the young and the old storyteller sat down to tell more stories together. And those stories are like the feathers. They're flying out there for us to share. And that, my friends, is my story.
Thank you, Shri. What a wonderful story, and such an apt story, because in this pandemic, in this virtual medium, um, there have been a lot of hue and cry about appropriation stories, um, due recognition or due credit is not being given, and all those things. Yes, I too believe stories are meant to be shared. But yes, we do have a ethic in storytelling where we give credit if you've heard the story from somebody. It's not, I don't read many stories, I listen to stories. And sometimes certain stories you just want to hear it verbatim because so beautifully narrated. So, I give due credit to where I hear the story, and it's a lovely story, apt for this time. Thank you for sharing that lovely story. And now I'm going to bring Hema onto the screen. And Hema, after that lovely story, we have got into that storytelling hut. We've
More.
created a little storytelling hut out here.
Yeah.
In Emerson College in England, there is a storytelling hut. You enter the hut, and that's where we would have our classes. So you created an atmosphere here. We've created. So we want to listen to a story from you, and tell us what is it that you're going to share with us tonight.
Well, I'm going to share a story from a book called "Where Are You Going, You Monkeys?" Written by it's a folk tales from Tamil Nadu. I remember Shri shared this book with me, and it's one of my favorite books that I keep reading. And this is a story written by K.I. Rajanarayanan, and he's the one who's compiled those books. Well, these are all folk tales, so it comes down through the ages. So I'm going to share this story. So
Lovely.
here goes.
I
Shall I
too have
start?
this. I too have his book. Okay, let's listen to you.
Yes, this is my adaptation of that. Well, on the edge of a small village of Singarapattanam in Tamil Nadu, there was a huge tamarind tree. All the people of the village passed under the tree to go to farms or to gather wood from the forest or wherever they had to go. If they had to go outstation, they had to cross the tamarind tree. And tamarind tree, as you know, tamarind tree, Puliyamaram, with sinister glee, hosts, not so living, the gone and beyond. Pei, Pishashi, Chatan, Kuti Chatan. Oh, the tamarind tree, the Puliyamaram. And Shingarapattanam Puliyamaram also had a Pei. Now, Pei is an evil spirit who is in enmity with the god. Okay? So it can affect the humans by inflicting a disease or cause some spiritual harm. The Shingarapattanam Pei could enter human bodies and could do as it pleases. But he was quite peaceful and calm, hanging around the tamarind tree, swinging from one branch to the other, just occasionally having fun at the expense of a lone traveler passing under the tree. The Pei would create some drama by making a stick chase after the traveler or tossing the traveler's belonging in the air and playing with it for a while, thereby terrorizing the traveler. Generally having fun. Silly prankster he was. But all that only till the day he saw this beautiful girl called Alamelu. Now, Alamelu was a fit, strong, dusky beauty with dark eyes, big dark eyes, chiseled nose, with a lithe figure. She could do the work of 5 men. She had started working in the fields, so she used to cross the tamarind tree every day to work. Now the Pei saw her and instantly fell in love with her. And he sang, "ஓ போறவளே போறவளே என் நெஞ்சை கவ்வி போறவளே கொஞ்சம் என்னை பாரவளே ஏங்குகிறேன் புளிமரத்தில் கொஞ்சம் என்னை பாரவளே. And he sang every time she passed the tamarind tree. Oh, gentle passerby, you steal my heart, passerby. Please see me, passer girl. I pine for you on the tamarind tree. Every day he saw her and he suffered. One day he sang, தாங்கலையே தாங்கலையே உன் ஏக்கம் என்னால் தாங்கலையே பூருகிறேன் உன்னுடலில் உன் பிரிவை என்னால் தாங்கலையே. I can't bear your pining. I can't bear. I possess your body now. I cannot bear your separation anymore, he said. And thus saying, he just touched her. The moment he touched her, he possessed her. He was very happy to be with her day in, day out. But our Alamelu was not aware of his possessing her. Days passed by. On one auspicious Friday morning, Alamelu had her head bath and dressed in all her finery and was on her way to the temple. Now, the Pei got worried. He then whispered to Alamelu, Alamelu, I am residing in your body. Please do not go to the temple. I can't stand any of those gods. Huh? Who are you? Said Alamelu. And where are you speaking from? She got really psyched. The Pei replied, I am the Pei from the tree, the tamarind tree. I love you so much. I couldn't bear your separation. So I entered your body and possessed you. I'm so happy being with you all the time. What? Alamelu uttered in surprise. What good does it do to me, you being in my body? She demanded. My family will keep beating me with neem leaves and dragging me to off to all the exorcists, and the village folk will say I'm possessed. No. I'm going to the temple. You get out of my body this instant. And she started walking straight to the temple. And the Pei pleaded, Alamelu, please, I can't do, I can't leave your body. I can do you great favors. Please don't ask me to get out. Alamelu smacked her head. You are a Pei. What favors can I expect from you? Pei earnestly replied, I'll make sure you never fall ill, not even a headache. If you have to carry a load, I will bear the weight. While you are reaping grain in the field, I'll help you to cut it twice as fast as you could ever do normally. Besides all this, if any scoundrel tries to tease you or misbehave with you, I will finish him. Now Alamelu gave it a thought. Okay, what harm is it to me if the Pei possesses me and does not harm me? I only stand to gain, and decided, okay, I'll not go to the temple. So the Pei was happy too, and he resided in her body and kept helping Alamelu with everything. Alamelu did not have any complaints with the Pei. She was happy because he was doing a lot of her work. Alamelu's parents had passed away, and she only had a sister who lived with her husband in the nearby village. One day, they came to Singarapattanam with a proposal for Alamelu because she was the only one who was taking care of her. She was worried about her. And they had chosen a boy from Singarampattanam, a boy who lived alone with his mother. And the alliance looked good, so without much ado, the marriage was fixed. Now, the Pei was not at all happy. He had a lot of conversations with Alamelu, all in vain. Alamelu told the Pei, see, I am going to be married soon. After that, I will have to go to the temple with my husband whenever he wants to pray. I will light the lamp. I'll have to burn the camphor. I have to light the incense in my house. All that will happen which you don't like. Go. It is better for you to leave my body now. The Pei was getting really fed up with all these arguments with Alamelu. He then angrily demanded, if you want me to leave your body, you have to offer me the life of someone in your family. If you fail to do so, I will take the life of your husband. Alamelu replied in a very sad tone, I have no parents. I have been living alone for many years. Finally, I am getting a husband of my own. How can I give up my tali? Please ask me for something else, dearest Pei. How can you do this to me? Please, Pei, don't do this to me. After all, the Pei loved her and he couldn't bear her tears. But he was a Pei after all. So he said, fine. What I love the most in the world, after you, of course, is sweet sugar paniyaram. Every new moon night for the next 1 year, after the rest of the village goes off to sleep, you must bring 7 paniyarams to the tamarind tree. If you do this, then I shall never ever trouble you again. But remember, you must keep this a secret, he said. Now Alamelu thought it was a good deal. So she readily agreed. She just wanted to get rid of this Pei and live a normal life. So she took 7 paniyarams to the tamarind tree each new moon night for the next few months. She took great care to keep it a secret from everyone, especially her husband. Just 4 months before the end of the year, she discovered that she had got pregnant. And her elder sister insisted that she go with her to her village for Alamelu's delivery. Now Alamelu was in a fix. She had to go and give the paniyarams to the Pei, otherwise the Pei will take her husband's life. So she went to the Pei and reassured him and told him that, see, I have to leave. I am going to my sister's house, but your paniyarams will come. Please don't harm my husband. So the Pei agreed. So she went back to her mother-in-law and requested her mother-in-law and told her that she must keep 7 paniyarams near the tamarind tree on every new moon night. She reassured and promised her mother-in-law that once she is back with the baby, she will explain the whole thing to her. The mother-in-law delivered the paniyarams for 2 following new moon nights. Diligently she did it. But she was a mother-in-law after all. She had her doubts and she did not want to wait till Alamelu came back and explained everything to her. So she told her son, Ede, you are not the only man in your wife's life. There is someone else too. The son was surprised and asked, why do you say so, Amma? All these months, she has been taking paniyarams to the tamarind tree every new moon night without your knowledge. Just before she left to her sister's place, she asked me to continue doing so as a favor to her. I did it twice and I checked both the times. The next day, the paniyarams were gone. So, not only the fellow is having an affair with your wife, but he's also stuffing his face with all our paniyarams every month. The foolish husband believed every word his mother said, and he announced, in that case, she will no longer be my wife. He immediately sent a message to Alamelu. As soon as Alamelu saw the message, only one word slipped out of her lips. Ayo, she said. She immediately packed her bags and came back to her husband's house, even though she was full-term pregnant. On the way to her husband's house, do you know where she went? She went to the tamarind tree and told the Pei, I will not be giving you any more paniyarams. You can come to my house in 2 days' time and take my mother-in-law's life instead. And the Pei was happy happy to agree. She then marched towards her husband's house. The moment she entered, both the mother and son shouted at her, insulted her, cursed her, and just stopped short of beating her. Now, Alamelu stood silently through all this barrage. And then, when they had settled down, she looked at her husband, straight in his eyes with her head held high. And she said, "Your mother is falsely accusing me. I have no relationship with any other man other than you. If what I now say is a lie, then may I fall down dead in 2 days' time. But if what I say is the truth, then may your lying mother fall down dead. In any case, you will know the absolute truth in 2 days. Until then, leave me alone." So she had 2 peaceful days. The mother and the son kept quiet. They were very peaceful. They did not trouble her at all. On the second day, the pay arrived as promised and took the mother-in-law's life. Alamelu looked at her husband and calmly said, "You fool, at last now do you see the truth? Your mother could not stand that you were in love with me, and she also knew that we are going to have a baby and that would strengthen our bond. So she wanted to get rid of me. And see, now the truth has spoken, and in the end, she is dead now." The husband realized his mistake. From that day on, he listened only to Alamelu, and they lived happily ever after. Thank you.
3 cheers to the pay. Hema, thank you. And I just made paniyaram yesterday, not the sweet one, but the salty one.
Hope no pay wants your paniyarams.
No. I'm very well insured against pay because I'm a Reiki practitioner and I believe I've kept myself in the pyramid and away from all the evil spirits. Yes, thank you for sharing that lovely Indian folk tale. And I know him as Rajanarayanan, right?
Yeah, Ki Rajanarayanan.
Yeah,
K.I.
and-
Rajanarayanan. Ki
yeah,
Rajanarayanan.
and he has some saucy tales as well, which are tied with a red ribbon.
Red,
So that
I can
children
actually show
open
you
it.
the book where
Yeah, you can show that. Yes, yes,
and the red ribbon has the saucy tales in it.
absolutely,
which
absolutely.
is told by the grandfather, which is the interesting part.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Yes, yeah. I'm not getting there about old men and how their mind works. Okay, so that was wonderful. Thank you for sharing. I'm looking at the time. We have about 5 to 7 minutes. So I would like, I would ask Shri, where do you think Mumbai Storytellers Society, or what do you think we've done? I think I know Hema has listed out all that we have done last year. She was mentioning while I was talking to her. So, how do you think we have coped during this pandemic? Because honestly, as storytellers, we believe in meeting people face to face, heart to heart, not through this medium where I can't see my audience and I'm looking at myself and saying, hey, is the light good? Am I looking pretty? Is my face showing more weight, or how do I look lean on the face? This is what one is seeing because one doesn't get to see the audience, but we've got used to it. So do you have something to tell us about it? Share with our viewers, Shri.
Sure. So I do agree. I think as in any performing arts, you want to see your audience because that allows you to improvise, and take in the audience. They're part of your telling. But I also feel that given the amount of time that we are all spending at home, when we discussed initially about going live, whether it was on Instagram or then having Zoom sessions. um, we did ideate a lot around the fact that is it something that will work? What do we do? How do we do it? What exactly do we want to do, right? And I think one thing that I personally also, in my profession separately, had also seen is that there is a need for good content, because when the pandemic hit, there was a lot of storytelling happening, and there is a lot of it available for free, right? And um, whether the content is interesting enough, engaging enough or not, that was left to be seen, right? So we did notice on our own that not everything was engaging enough. So we did think that if MSS was to create or curate an online show, we should try our best to give something to the people that would be fun, that would be engaging, and that will allow them for a period of an hour to at least forget their problems, right? And it could be as small as just being cooped up in a house with all your family members and not really getting any me time, right? So I think that was one of the reasons why we kind of said we will curate these events. And then we of course went on to do supper with stories, which was again one of Usha's brilliant ideas that came out when we were chatting, that we will do supper and breakfast, that is dinner time for adults and breakfast for children.
It's
And we then of course had some wonderful fantastic storytellers who were part of it. But yes, I think now what we've also reached is fatigue. There is a lot of online fatigue, and I think we are also fairly tired. So I think since January this year, we said we will do one event in the month, and we charge a very minimal amount, and that is primarily for the upkeep of the society, and to maintain its running, and to ensure that we have some kind of funding that is built up, so that when we do have live shows, then there are more expenses in terms of the venue costs and many other things. So so from January, we've been doing only one session. We had one supper with stories, and in February we'll be having breakfast with stories. So I think one of you all can speak about that as well.
Yes, thank you, Shri. Very well. Hema, you could take over and tell.
I would like to add, we also introduced a very beautiful concept of Katakshari. Again, one of Usha's brilliant ideas where, we kind of play a story Antakshari where, a storyteller starts a story and takes leaves the last word for the next storyteller to continue the stories. So the next storyteller has to take the last word and connect their story to that word and continue. It's a very interesting. We had one round of it, and the second round is coming up next month, and so really looking forward to that. And it's a lovely space where each storyteller has to adapt and quickly change and be on your toes and immediately change towards your story to the word that is being given. So you're not aware of what what the word is going to be. So it just goes on from there. So that is something else. And I think MSS also always, Mumbai Storytellers Society always looks forward to present workshops and spread the learning of how to tell stories and understand different kinds of storytelling. Areas that we can work on, like there can be healing stories, there can be how do you use therapeutic stories. There are so many things, and we have had a few workshops when pre-pandemic, before that, where we could have live sessions. But yes, we have to figure out ways of having more workshops and see how we can really spread ourselves and do a lot more for the society. Other thing that we have also started doing, which we had started right from the first year, was working with NGOs and spreading the joy of storytelling to the NGO children, which we have continued during the pandemic too. And I think slowly we are going forward with a lot more association with NGOs to spread a lot more stories and spread the joy of listening to stories and going into getting transported into a different world through storytelling. Yeah. So
Yes,
these are
yes,
the
Hema.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And adding to that, yes, since we are ourselves a not-for-profit organization, and service is our motive, because even our mission is to revive the oral tradition in the community, especially in the adult community. Adult Mumbaikar, invite them to talk and tell and share stories. So we have partnered with. Not for profit. I think it's the Smile Foundation. What is it, Hema?
Um, this
Spreading
spreading
smiles.
smiles, team spreading smiles,
Yeah,
team
Team
spreading
Spread
smiles, and
Smile.
joy of giving Dan Utsav. These are
Yeah,
the two
and we've been
organizations.
2 months in a row. We've been every month doing stories, and it's been a pleasure. And we plan to continue. And also, certain other collaborations are also in the pipeline. And for me, one thing that the pandemic has brought is it's brought the world closer. So it's very easy to connect with somebody from New Zealand and somebody from North America. So it's been wonderful to connect with storytellers from around the world. And there is so much to talk, but I see the time is ticking and it says 1 hour is over. That's when you have three storytellers in the house. It's never ending. But we'll definitely be back, because I plan Storytellers Cafe plans to bring other storytelling guilds across India so that we can hear their side. And many of them have been formed, but there have been some old ones like Bangalore Storytellers Society, which was, I think, created way back in 2013, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll definitely invite them on the show. And thank you, Hema. Thank you, Shri, for coming tonight and sharing your lovely stories with our audience. Please do write your comments on the chat box, and you can always listen to the stories on the YouTube channel of Bharat FM as well as on the Facebook. So it stays there. So once again, Storytellers Cafe, a part of Bharat FM media. Thanks everyone, each and every one of our listeners, for tuning in and kind of sustaining your interest. And I hope we can bring you some interesting guests every week. They are wonderful. Next week, a guest is she is really a what do I say, an Instagram influencer. Please wait. Stay tuned for that. She comes from the southern part of India, a wonderful friend of mine. So we will meet. And thank you once again. Thank you, everybody. And let me play the ending of the whole thing. I have to do that. Yes. Thank you so much. Good
Thank you,
night.
Thank
Usha.
you.
This is Bharat FM.
बजेगा भारत झूमेगा भारत.
ये है भारत FM.
बजेगा भारत झूमेगा भारत.